Hello world, my name is Leo and welcome to my first soft-spoken video game review. It's soft-spoken because I decided to experiment with that, because why not? So this isn't meant to be a professional review or a video essay. This is just meant to be a kind of conversation between me and you about games that I'm playing and topics that I am passionate about, and the opportunity for me to dive deeper into the games that I play and appreciate them more. And there will be clips where relevant to illustrate my point if needed, but for the most part, this is just going to be me talking. So yeah, come and sit with me and let me tell you about a game called Haven. So I did put out a first impressions video a little bit ago, but in case you didn't see that, let me tell you a little bit about what Haven is. So Haven is a game about love, first and foremost. You play as two people named U and K who are in love with each other, and they're not allowed to be in love with each other because their home planet has like a matchmaking system. So they escape from their home planet to another planet to be together, and throughout the game you are kind of following along with their relationship, watching it grow and evolve over time. You are exploring this planet, fighting enemies, and trying to keep yourselves from being torn apart and kind of just help you and Kay build a life together. And when I first heard about this game, it landed on my radar because the lead developer, the creative director, Emmerich Thulla, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but they compared it to a cross between Persona and Journey, and those are two of my favorite games of all time, so I was really looking forward to playing this one. And if you saw my first impressions, you probably saw that it was kind of all over the place. It had one of the best intros of any game I'd ever seen, but the exploration, particularly the traversal controls, kind of turned me off immediately. The combat was also a bit of a question mark, but the dialogue seemed very charming, and the relationship aspect seemed very compelling. And so I wanted to talk in more detail about all of those things, and I wanted to do it in kind of a weird order. So I want to talk about aesthetics first, and then I want to go into combat, followed by traversal and exploration, and then I want to talk about the relationship last because, in my opinion, that is the most important thing. And if you guys were to remember one thing from this video, I want it to be about the relationship stuff. So yeah, when it comes to the aesthetics, the creative director in an interview said that when it comes to their art direction at the Game Bakers, which is their studio, they said that, and I'm quoting him here, they want their art direction to be stylized, simple, and super colorful. And so I think they really achieved that here. I really like the way that the game is presented. The focus is not on being super detailed. The focus is instead on color, and it's very pleasing to the eyes. All of the lands that you explore are very bright, with a mixture of blue, yellow, green, and red as you travel through all the different biomes. The nest, which is U and K's home base, kind of, is very colorful. It's cluttered, but it never feels like too much, and it just feels like a really cozy place. The sunsets are very pretty. The like strands or like particles when your characters are gliding. Um, yeah, all of it is just really nice to look at. And I think, yeah, the color over detail here was a really good call. Finally, when it comes to visual aesthetics, the character models aren't the most detailed, but the character portraits are incredibly expressive, and they bring the characters to life beautifully during dialogue sequences. Now, I'm not an artist, so all of this, like visual aesthetics, I'm very easy to please when it comes to this kind of thing. I love different art styles, so I don't have a whole lot to say about that. But the other part of, or the other half of the aesthetics that I would like to talk about a little bit is the music, which I have become obsessed with this soundtrack since I finished the game. The composer is a French electronic synthwave musician named Danger, and they did an amazing job with this music. Um, it the best way I can describe it is it almost has a like dream-like quality to it. Like all of the stuff that I said before, like electronic synthwave, that is how to describe it like technically. Like there's a lot of like melodic synths, there's a lot of bass, there's a heavy emphasis on percussion in a lot of the songs. There's like some like instrumental bits that might be like sampled or recreated from synths or something like that. But the tone that it all conveys, like I said, it's very dreamlike. And what I mean by that is the music feels like fast and slow at the same time. Like the beats are very upbeat and like fast, but some of the like basses and some of the instruments are like pulling against it to create this like ebb and flow for each song. And like some songs have more of a focus on some emotions than others. Like the songs that are playing while you are gliding around or in combat tend to be more like fast paced, whereas the songs that play while you're in your home base tend to be more like chill. And there's also like really powerful moments and really emotional moments and like bittersweet moments. And I think that the music does a really good job of conveying all of that, and throughout all of it is that like dreamlike quality, which I think fits really well in a game that is all about love. So the next thing that I want to talk about, I don't really have a clean way of transitioning from that. I want to talk about the gameplay next. And before I talk about any of that, like combat or exploration, I think it's important to establish the like philosophy that the game bakers and Emmerich Thoa were approaching this game with. So in that same interview that I mentioned earlier, Emmerich Thoa said that they wanted to put, like I said, they wanted to put love at the center of this story. And a quote that stuck out to me from this interview is, quote, "I was really interested to look at what is a relationship. What is love after the first weeks or months? And how could I put that concept at the center of the gameplay?" So everything about this game, combat, traversal, exploration, everything is all centered on this relationship, which is why I want to get into the relationship, like the core of that, last. But for now, I want to talk about gameplay, and I specifically want to talk about combat first. So approaching combat with this philosophy, combat works as almost like a pseudo turn-based, but it's real-time kind of thing. It's really weird. I don't think any other game really has combat like this, and props to them for trying something new, honestly. Like, this combat fascinates me. That being said, it really didn't click with me. When I first ran into it during my first impressions video, I said I think I like it. By the end of the game, I really wasn't liking it. So how combat works is you are controlling both U and K at the same time. For U, it is the face buttons on the controller, and for K, it's the arrow buttons on the controller. And each of them have the same moveset, a melee attack, a ranged attack, a shield, and a like pacify ability that you can use to like uncorrupt the beasts that you're facing after you've weakened them. And on paper, it is a very interesting concept, and it does tie a lot into that relationship aspect, because being able to control both characters at the same time, you are supposed to be able to kind of have them pull off moves in tandem or like in sync. So someone might like hit one beast's weakness, and then another one might hit another beast's weakness like right after the other, and then one might be doing a pacify, another one might be shielding, and like it's kind of like building up combos and doing like a back and forth. And it's very interesting on paper, but in execution, for me at least, I was having very mixed to bad results. So one thing that I noticed that got worse as the more combat experiences I had was holding down the buttons, which is what you need to do to have U and K do anything, feel really slow. Like, every button press feels like it takes forever to execute, and the animations that you need to do, that you need to watch in order to have U and K pull off the attacks, they also take a while to execute. And so I found myself being attacked a lot while I was attacking, because the creatures act in real time. They just like wait until it's like their turn to attack. So the strategy that I fell into that I found was the safest was having one person shield, because if one person is shielding, they will either block an attack that's coming at them or block the attack that's coming at the other person, like jump in front of them. So no matter what, if a shield is up, the next attack is always being blocked. So yeah, my strategy was one person shielding, one person attacking, and then switch once the shield was broken. And watching the same animations, like for however many combat encounters I had to do, and feeling like I had to do that strategy over and over, it just got boring and so repetitive after a while. And you are like limited on the amount of combos you can pull off, because they start introducing like a bunch of different enemies in the same encounter later on, and each enemy has like a different weakness or like a different timing that you have to do in order to like hit them in their weak spot like at the right time. And so it kind of limits you on the like combos that you can do. And so, like I said, with my strategy of shielding and attacking, that was kind of the most effective strategy for all combat encounters, like a jack of all trades. And I don't know, maybe I was playing it wrong. Maybe I should have been focusing more on combos, and that's why I didn't enjoy it as much. But I saw other reviewers. I looked up other reviews, because I was like, did other people enjoy this combat? And I saw mixed things. Some people seemed to really enjoy it. Others were like me, and it was like, it's kind of an exercise in repetitive repetition and frustration. And like the other thing is combat doesn't evolve over time. Like those four things I said, the melee attack, a ranged attack, a shield, and pacify, those are the only four moves that you will be working with for the vast majority of combat. Like later on you do get like combo moves where if you and K are both doing a ranged attack at the same time, for example, you will do a like duo blast and it'll be a super powerful ranged attack. And that's kind of cool, but the thing is you can't use that during normal encounters, I found, because again, the animation to actually get that attack off takes so long that very often I would find myself getting attacked and taking damage during the animation. And then other than those duo attacks, you have like, you can craft consumables later on that can make your attacks faster, or you have like a limited ability to be able to execute a like group attack, like attack multiple enemies with a single attack, but those are like consumables and you have to craft those back at your base, so they're limited. And those are the only other thing that you can use during combat. So that just adds to the feeling of repetition, because a lot of time you are just going to be working with your four base abilities and you're going to be watching the same animations over and over, even if you do end up like mixing up combos and stuff like that. And I mean, like, they're nice, the animations are cool, but like I spent 14 hours with this game, and by the end of it I was hoping that there would be a point where combat would just stop and I wouldn't have to do it anymore. So yeah, that was just my experience with it. Like I said, other reviewers seem to enjoy it, so your mileage may vary when it comes to whether or not you would enjoy this kind of combat, but yeah, for me, it really started getting old the longer I played, and I really wasn't enjoying it by the end of my time. Thankfully, I do have more to say, or better things to say, when it comes to exploration and traversal. In my first impressions video, I was worried that exploration might ruin the game completely, specifically because of the controls. When I first started controlling the characters, I thought the turns were too wide. I thought that like drifting helped a little bit, but not all that much. And well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So how traversal works in Haven, if you haven't seen my first impressions, is you can't walk anywhere because walking is incredibly slow. And if you try to walk, the characters will make jokes about how slow you're going. So your main method of transportation are your like jet boots, and you'll be gliding along the ground, and this is where the creative director was making the comparison to Journey. They meant it to be kind of like a chill Zen experience. And in my first impressions video, I found that while you're gliding, in my opinion, the turns were very wide. Like it felt like you had a lot more weight than you did. Like it almost felt like you were controlling a vehicle, not a person. But you are meant to be going fast, so I kind of get the wide turns. But what I didn't get was the U-turn mechanic, which is mapped to down on the joystick. And if you hit down on the joystick, how the U-turn works is U and K will flip in the air and go in the opposite direction that they were going before, and the camera whips around to face the other way. And as soon as I saw this, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to constantly be setting this off, because there was a moment where I was trying to line myself up with something. This game has like these things called flow threads where you can glide along them and it'll recharge your boots, and you can also like follow them to different areas of the map and it'll help you get to places you can't normally reach. But I was trying to line myself up and the turns were so wide and I was constantly accidentally setting off the U-turn that I eventually had to stop gliding, walk so that I was straight on with the flow thread, and then continue gliding. And they did announce, or they did show off a like drift mechanic after the U-turn mechanic, which helps you make sharper turns. And honestly, I think that kind of saved it, because as I was playing after that, I didn't actually have a problem with traversal. I did accidentally set off the U-turn a few times, but for the most part it did kind of emulate that chill zen experience that they were going for. The drifting does help you make more subtle movements, and yeah, overall I felt like they did a fine job with it. And I basically like I said, I only set off the U-turn a few times, and for the most part I actually kind of ignored the U-turn mechanic. I was able to kind of just go straight, drift where I needed to. If I needed to turn around, I would just drift and go in a circle, and yeah, overall it turned out fine. And going along the drift threads actually felt really good, like being able to fly through the air, and you unlock something later on where if you go off a cliff, like U and K will do tricks, and that was always fun to see. And yeah, overall I'd say I had a pretty good time with it. When it comes to exploration, how that works is the map is divided into different like quadrants, and every day, because this game does operate on a day-night cycle, you can explore like further and further out from your ship, and you are cleaning the islands of, or like these quadrants of a substance called rust, which is infecting each like fragment or island and corrupting the animals that are on it, which is where like combat comes in. And so you just do that by gliding over different like rust nodes, and I found this to be pretty chill. There is like a satisfying element to it, to like finding all of the nodes and watching a whole section of rust clear off the ground before your eyes, like in a second. And the only complaint that I have with this mechanic is there were some parts where I had a lot of trouble like finding the last node, and sometimes there are areas where that are only accessible via flow thread, but you don't necessarily know which flow thread it is, because the quadrants or the islands themselves don't have their own maps. You just have an overall map. So I sometimes would find myself like going around trying to figure out how to get to a certain spot or how to find the last node, and sometimes I had to try and find like something to give me a bird's eye view of like, oh okay, that's where the node is. But yeah, I consider this kind of a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. Overall, I was more satisfied with it than anything, which really surprised me given how I felt about it during my first impressions. So besides clearing up rust, what are you doing while you're exploring? Well, you are essentially a resource gathering, I guess. Like you find a lot of seeds and fruit for different dishes that you can craft back at the nest, and you're finding some of the story beats are like you finding parts for your ship to be able to repair it, and well, I guess those aren't story beats, but it does tie into the main story. But anyway, you can also find these camps that act as like stopping points along the way as you're exploring, and you can use them to cook or rest, and heal up. And later on, you unlock the ability to unlock these little houses that you can find in some of the islands. And if you open them, it usually triggers some dialogue between you and Kay as they search it, and usually you end up with some kind of item that you can bring back to the nest and use it as like decoration that can prompt even more dialogue. And so I know on the surface that doesn't sound like a lot. There's not a whole lot of like secrets or anything to find on the map, and unless you want to get literally all of the bushes, like all of the berries and all of the bushes, you don't have a whole lot of reason to explore every corner of the map. But I will say that the like houses in particular made exploration absolutely worth it. And there were some other things that I saw, not in exploration, but like while exploring, that really kind of opened my eyes to how well the concept of love was put into the design. And this is kind of where I want to get into talking about the relationship and the story and the characters and all of that stuff, because I cannot stress enough just how well done that aspect of the game is. So I remember a specific moment while I was out and about exploring, and it was at one of the camps. I had just finished a recording session. It was the first camp I had ever stopped at, and I had turned off the recording, but I had left the game open, and I was in the middle of converting the file, and all of a sudden, you and Kay embraced, just like as their idle animation. They, and I got a trophy that said hug, and I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool. Their idle animation is that they embraced. I'm really sad that I didn't catch that in recording. So my next recording session, I tried to duplicate it, and I did. And what I found is that if you let U and K just stand there and you let them embrace, if one of them has lower health than the other one, when they embrace, the one with the lower health will be healed up to match the other person. And I found that to be such a cool mechanic and such a like thematic way of being able to take advantage of like healing. And after that, I began noticing like more things, like when you're gliding, if you glide in like a straight line for long enough, U and K will start to hold hands as they're gliding, and they are like constantly talking back and forth. And like I had said in my first impressions, that I had a feeling that the game was going to be made up of the little moments, and the embracing mechanic and the holding hands were just perfect examples of that, where it was just little touches, those little attentions to detail that really were just the starting point for how much I would fall in love with this game and how it views and depicts love. Because, so really quick, when it comes to story, the actual plot of the game, it's actually very short, and smartly, the game bakers have the story kind of take a back seat. And it is a good story. I won't spoil any of it because I think that the game is worth checking out on your own. But it is like definitely second to what is the beating heart of Haven, and that is the relationship between you and Kay. So in addition to like holding hands and the embracing mechanic, the houses that I mentioned that you go into that prompt the dialogue, those were by far my favorite part of exploration. And that is because the dialogue in this game is so incredibly well written. You and Kay feel like two people who are in love with each other. And I was really curious about how this game would interpret love. And the best way I can describe it is that it feels like their love is natural, it feels genuine, and above all, it feels sincere. Because sometimes the dialogue in this game can be a bit cheesy, and I said in my first impressions that like there was a perfect balance of cheesy and charm. But the more I heard it, the more that I found that not only was the writing good, but like no matter how cheesy the writing could sometimes be, the delivery was always done with the utmost sincerity, and the voice acting in this game is just incredible. Like the delivery of each line and like the changes in tone and the inflections and the changes in pitch and in like the voices as you and Kay are talking to each other, you really feel like they're in love with each other, and it's very maturely depicted as well. Like they talk about a lot of like existential stuff. Like they had to leave their planet behind. They left their families and everything they knew behind to be with each other. And they talk about that, and they talk about some tough topics, and they also like talk about sex and stuff like that. And then there are also like these little charming moments where they're just like joking and making fun of each other, and those none of the moments ever failed at putting a smile on my face. And it's not just the like, if I had to describe how this relationship is depicted, there are like errands that are like the houses that you can trigger dialogue as they like search it, and then there are events where every time you cook a meal and eat it, you are always treated to a new event between you and Kay, where they are talking about some random thing, or like discussing some kind of topic, or doing like exercising, or talking about like a book, or just completely random things. And I never encountered like a repeat one. Every single one felt new, and it felt organic, and it felt like with every one the relationship was evolving. And that's the other thing. Some of these events were like connected to each other. Like they had like chains. Like there was one that only took place if you went to camps, and it was a chain of 3 events where the first event was Kay telling you about like shooting stars, and she was complaining about how she had never seen a shooting star. And the second event was like you saying, okay, I'm gonna see a shooting star this time, and then she fell asleep beforehand, and then like there's a third event after that, and you can actually see like the relationship like growing. Like all of the events feel remembered, none of them feel insignificant. And then the other way that the relationship is depicted is like relationship. So we have errands, we have events, and then we have relationship milestones, where all of these events and all of the, like if you want to fight, or all of the, like some of the like houses that you explore, they give you like XP in the form of like a relationship meter, and every time you fill that meter, like that's how you get your upgrades to your health and traversal and stuff like that. And in order to trigger the upgrade and to reset the meter, you like initiate a relationship milestone, where, and these are like where some of the more important events are, where they are discussing like more serious topics, stuff like the existential stuff and sex, and discussing their own love for each other and what that means to them, and talking more about their home planet as well, because the game doesn't deliver a lot of exposition when it comes to UNK's background, and that is because like UNK would already know all of that stuff, so it wouldn't make sense for them to talk about their home planet in like great detail, because they like lived on it, they already know a lot of it. And so through watching these events, you kind of get an idea of what their past was like, what their home planet was like, and I just think that's a smart way to deliver it, because again, like all of that stuff is taking a back seat to this relationship. And so that's why I wanted to end with talking about this, because this truly, like, despite all of the flaws I found like in the combat and a little bit with the like traversal and exploration, the relationship aspect just elevates everything around it. Just again, natural, mature, genuine, and sincere. And the more that I thought about it, and the more that I looked back on these events that I liked so much, I realized that I can't stay mad at this game. Like, the one thought that kept going through my mind was, this experience was so uneven, but in the end, it was worthwhile. And how can I be cynical about a game that has so much love and passion ingrained into its DNA? And, you know, like the developers, the game makers, very clearly had a vision in mind when it came to this game. And while the execution might be mixed in some aspects, in my opinion, they tried new things, all in service of making sure that this relationship was done justice, and I think that they delivered. And so, yeah, if I had to, if there was one thing that I wanted you guys to like take away from this, is that this game portrays love in a way that not a whole lot of other games do, and I think it is worth seeing. Like, I am recommending this game despite all of its faults. And yeah, like, I hope that in the future more games do portray relationships like this. Like the developer in that interview made a point that a lot of games, when they portray relationships, um, and they said like JRPGs specifically, a lot of them have like these adult-looking characters, but when it comes to like the dialogue, it feels like the first time they are flirting with someone, or like the first time they have feelings for someone. And so to have a relationship depicted like this, that is like already like, you're not trying to initiate the relationship, they're already in love with each other, and they are like portraying it as like adults would, and not like, I'm not meaning like overly like horny or like overly cringe or overly like lovey-dovey. It's just, yeah, it's just done so incredibly well, and I hope that more games approach relationships in this aspect, or in this way, like something that feels real and something that you feel like you are maintaining. Oh, I almost forgot, there are dialogue options in this game, so like you aren't making any like decisions per se, but so the story isn't going to change depending on what you pick. There's like one aspect, there's like a confidence mechanic where depending on who ends up being more confident in the relationship, it does affect like one thing, but I'm not gonna get into that. The main reason for the dialogue options is to make it, in my opinion, is to make it feel like you are participating in the relationship. You aren't just watching two people talk to each other. You are actively contributing to watching their relationship grow, or you're actively contributing to growing their relationship, I guess would be the better wording for that. And yeah, even though it didn't really affect anything, I did sometimes find myself like staying with two dialogue options for a little bit and being like, how do I want this person to react in this situation? Like how would I react in this situation? And yeah, I just think it's really well done. And yeah, this is my first time doing one of these, so I don't really know how to end it. If I hadn't forgotten about the dialogue options, I probably would have ended it already, but yeah, this game is really good. Buy the soundtrack, or check out the soundtrack, because it's incredible, and who knows, maybe you'll end up enjoying the combat more than I did. Like I said, maybe I played it wrong, but yeah, at the very least, this relationship is worth seeing, and you and Kay are worth getting to know. And yeah, I'm not going to be giving this game a score. I feel like that feels just kind of arbitrary. So yeah, that's where I'll end it with, this relationship is worth seeing, and that alone makes the entire game worthwhile, in my opinion. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching my first soft-spoken review. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've said with this game, and if you have played this game, I would love to hear about your own experience with it. And yeah, also with this format, please feel free to give me feedback on this as well. If you like the soft-spoken thing, if you like the more like conversational way of doing it, feel free to let me know of that as well. Again, this is my first one, and at least from my perspective, it feels like some parts of it were a little bit rough when it comes to how I was talking, but I do want to get better at this, because I feel like this is a very interesting idea, and I'd like to like continue to review games and talk about games in this format, or maybe like a different format if you guys don't like the soft spoken thing. But anyway, uh, yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe if you like this. Ring the bell. Let me know if you'd like to see more. And yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Goodbye.